Anaisnin. So the risk so a lot of leadership and a lot of leadership qualities and a lot of leading in a world that's ever changing is all about reaching into yourself, understanding your vision, but also encouraging yourself to step out of your comfort zone, face some of the fears, and grow into this larger version of not only yourself for your own leadership, but also the entire team that you're either leading or being a part of. Team leadership is so one of the things that I talk a lot with my team is each person in the team is a leader. Like the one of the reasons why we're doing this conversation as well with our group today is because there is a misconception that a leader is like there's only one leader in a whole group of people, right? And that leader is sort of the top person and everybody listens to him. That is a outdated paradigm and is an outdated form of thinking about leadership because each person in essence is a leader to themselves and also a leader to each other, and of course the whole company is being led in a certain direction. So there's leadership in many multiple levels that you have to consider, especially when it comes to being clear and effective in a physical or a remote world. And so that's the opening that I want you to frame first, that leadership is not just about one person who has all the answers, but it's about taking ownership over your own responsibilities, the visions that you have committed to create with the company, but also it is about improving yourself constantly in an iterative process so that you're showing up as a leader in the best way possible. Okay, cool. How are we doing so far? Good. All right. So I'm just going to jump in to share a little bit more. Oh, awesome. Nice. Loving the emojis. All right. I'm just going to jump into sharing a little bit more about myself and what I've done since CMC. So I graduated in 2010. And right now I'm an international speaker, author, mentor, founded a program called the Liberated Leaders Program, which helps high achievers, entrepreneurs, and visionary corporate leaders experience breakthroughs and breakthroughs in their internal worlds, but also in their businesses. So this goes anywhere from leadership, embodiment, voice, career, and even the way that people create wealth in their businesses or in their lives. So our company marries the strategies of business, career, life with profound personal healing because it takes a lot of internal changes to be able to show up in the most effective way externally, especially if you are in a multicultural and international context. So I grew up in Singapore. Well, not really. I was born in Singapore. I grew up in Germany, Taiwan, Shanghai, Hong Kong, and have been traveling. California, CMC was one of the first U.S. experiences that I had, and then since then I've lived in Boston, San Francisco. I had spent a little bit of time in Arizona, and now I'm in Paris. I was in Hong Kong before Boston, which is where I was when COVID started, and then I'm returning back to Singapore in a couple of months, or in a couple of weeks. So in my best-selling book, so I have a best-selling book called The You Only Live Once Life and Business Innovation Style. I share a 15-year quest about how the journey I took and went through corporates. How it shaped the way I viewed the world, but also how I was able to use the different pieces of entrepreneurship, corporate world, and then vision and combine it together to create the experiences that we're sharing with the world today. So our community consists of 30,000 over people, and it's in all countries, USA, Asia, Africa, Europe, South America. So we've done talks. We do like large scale talks, and we do them all over the world with, we have 100 over events. So a lot of the work that we do also gets featured on publications, and we have been really, really lucky to be able to spread the word and share this type of lifestyle and business style in entrepreneurship to to many different institutions as well as organizations and networks, and been featured on over 350 media outlets. Yeah, so this is a quick overview of who we are. Like my company is called Y Age, and the reason like I wanted to so uh, to come back to CMC and share some of these skills with you guys is because there was so much that CMC had given me in terms of where it started. And there's also so much more of the real world experience that I find that if we can share with you right now at this stage of your life, then in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, or even in the next 3 years, or even in the next year itself, we can't imagine like what's possible. So this is the main reason. And yeah. So does anyone want to like introduce themselves just in a popcorn style? I'll take like two or three, and just to know like what major you're doing and what brought you to entrepreneurship and and innovation. Just feel free to unmute yourself. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I can go first. My name is Sophie, and I'm a junior at CMC, and I'm an econ and art major. And what brought me to entrepreneurship was, well, potentially I might want to start like my own business later. I'm really interested in advertising and branding, so maybe something like that.
Gotcha. Thank you. Cool. Anyone else want to share some of your like where you are right now? And yeah, go for it. Who is it? I see some familiar faces as well.
So my name is Mahali. I'm currently in Tel Aviv, but I'm a Bay Area native, class of 2023, and I'm majoring in economics. And what drew me to innovation and entrepreneurship was growing up in the Bay Area, surrounded by tech and whatnot. And it was just the idea that we can really shape our future. And I have an interest in venture capital, so I like the connection between that and entrepreneurship as I move forward.
Nice. Good to meet you.
Hi, my name's Kaval. I'm in San Francisco. I've like lived in the Bay Area throughout my entire life. I'm a sophomore at CMC, and I'm majoring in science management and data science. Um, my interest in innovation really comes from like my past science research projects, which were all focused in on engineering and medicine. And I think the hardest part in like science research and the medical field is that it's so hard to go ahead and like get a patent on your work and then actually use your like engineering for like innovation and brand a company around it. So in that aspect, I'm really interested in innovation and entrepreneurship, and hopefully one day I can see one of my projects actually come to life.
Awesome. Welcome. All right. This is awesome, guys. You guys are all over the world and already doing such cool projects. And I'm sure some of you who haven't shared yet are also working on some really cool projects. So yeah, I'm just welcome everybody here. Cool. So in the next 2 hours, I'll give you everything that I can about remote leadership and effectiveness. And if you want to go deeper as well, I'm always here and I'll share with you how to do that as well. Okay. So let's see. So our agenda today looks something like this. We're going to be talking about why remote leadership at this time. It's kind of self-explanatory, but why exactly do we need it right now? And how to lead, delegate, and let's see, loading. How to lead, delegate, and be successful and an inspiring leader when you're working remotely. We're also going to be talking about top tools. So professional tools that save you time and increase team effectiveness. And then we're also going to be talking about team structure, like how you can structure your teams and bring the best out of yourself as well as those you work with. And lastly, we're going to be talking about KPIs, which are key performance indicators on how to measure whether or not you're focusing on the right things and how you know that your company is going in the right direction, whether it is your team, you're being a founder, or it is the team that you have a team that reports to another team or that reports to another team. So So that's the main structure that we're going to be talking about today. And right off the bat, we have a couple of questions in terms of polls just to get slightly better read of the room as well. Let me see where we have here. Okay, so I wanted to know a little bit more about what industries you guys are all interested in at the moment, as well as how you best learn and what your career goals are at the moment, so that I can also see how we can cater some of this content that we have today to share that with you. So I'm just going to pull up a poll and send it to each of your screens. And we're just going to take a real quick moment to just fill those out and just see what kind of folks we have in the room. So we're going to spend about 2 minutes to finish this. So just check all that apply. Awesome. We just have 3 more people, and then all 19 answers will be in. Cool. So let's take a look at who we have in the room today. So you guys can see on the screen the distribution of interests that we have in this group today. We have 3 people want to be in real estate, looking at real estate industry. We've got people interested in information media publishing. About 42% of us are interested in that. Personal and professional development, about 16%, 58% in finance and insurance, not a surprise for this group. And healthcare, manufacturing coming up at 11%. And we've got wholesale retail trade at about 21% and professional businesses around 42. And then we also have others. So that's cool. We have a good mix of interests here. Most people here today are going to be learning visually. That's great. And then by doing as well. So entrepreneurship is literally learning by doing. So you're definitely in the right place. And career goals. We have the highest career goals as a founder of a company. So I'm really excited to hear about what kind of ideas you guys are having at the moment. And then also working specifically in a field. That's cool. Let's see. I'm here to learn. Awesome. And I have experience working with someone remotely. So we already have more than half of our class today having experience remote working. And I'm not surprised because this whole year has been pretty much remote, right? And team cohesion is the biggest question for today. So that's great. And time management as well, because time management is one of the items that almost every single person faces and constantly is optimizing. So that's not a surprise. Cool. All right. So let's see. I'm going to save this. So never before has there been so many people working remotely, right? In our world today, remote work is very normal. I started working remotely in 2015, and there's like we call ourselves digital nomads. And at that time, it wasn't even a thing to actually be a digital nomad, and it was very rare for people to be in the industry, especially if you're graduating from a somewhere like Claremont colleges and then working in corporate. It was very rare to be an entrepreneur and be traveling around the world. And the reason I did that mainly was because I grew up traveling around the world as part of my childhood upbringing, and I didn't want to stop doing that and stop exploring as I went into my late 20s. And so and so the remote world working culture is inevitable. It's already happening and it will continue to happen. And the cool thing is that all of you are already doing this, and this is part of your norm. And it will become more and more part of your norm. So you're actually at the leading edge of this trend, the leading edge of this whole movement that's happening. And a lot of people actually don't know how to work remotely in the most effective way possible. And so what that means is that you actually get a lot of a head start and also an opportunity to create skill set in this area that you would vastly be ahead of the curve than other people. So this is a really good time to do this. So let's see. So the first thing that I wanted to share with you is our why, right? Like, why is remote work important? Or why do we want to not only adapt, but also to thrive in the remote world? And the first concept is that leaders change first. And so as you're going into this remote world, you want to be thinking about what kind of changes do I need to make in order to be not only more effective than in the physical environment, but what way can I create community and create culture in the remote world that can foster not only ideas but also effectiveness. So for example, one of the things that we have done is we were able to have projects lined up and project timelines lined up based on the person's time zones. We had time zones on 5 different continents. But what that also meant is that if one person started the project in one time zone while they were sleeping, another person could be working on the same project till the next day. And so you can structure your projects in ways that take advantage of that remote culture that everybody can take advantage of the opportunities of the time that comes through. So what are some of the strengths and weaknesses of remote leadership? Again, just type it into the chat. I think some of you have already mentioned time management and different things. Communication, yeah. Convenience to get into a meeting whenever, wherever. How can you convince? Oh, yeah, that's the other one. Recognizing the line between workday and personal time decision making, lack of community connection. Yeah. So thank you for participating. Communication is a huge challenge because I'm just going to address this one by one. So communication is a huge challenge because you don't have the person in front of you. So your communication skills have got to be not only crisp and clear, but it also has to utilize like another level of persuasive skills and another level of influence and presence that you're going to be able to inspire people and not just demand things from the other person, right? So communication skills does not just equate I need A, you give me A, but it's I need A, and these are the reasons. And what do you think? And when do you have time to complete this? It's like getting that level of, you want to communicate your idea. So it's like a 4 or 5 step communication, um, kind of like cliff notes, right? So you state what you want, your intention of the meeting usually, and then you basically, like the way that we found that it was really effective, like you state the intention of the meeting, and then you share why this is important, like what needs to be done, and you get the other person's input so that you get the buy-in from every stakeholder in the screen. And then you ask each person, when are they able to deliver, because you need to get their buy-in and their commitment, otherwise the thing does not get done. So it's really important. And I see some of the nods here, because the biggest challenge is that you communicate and you're like, I need this by this date. And then 3 weeks goes by and you don't get anything back, right? That's the worst. And it happens over and over again. Miscommunication happens when timelines are not being communicated effectively. And also when there's no accountability checks along the way. And at the same time, if you miscommunicate, then what you get back might be completely different from what you asked for or what you had in mind, right? And then that creates inefficiencies that drags out timelines, and then you don't meet your final deadline. So this is absolutely, communication is some of the weaknesses, and there are definitely ways to solve that. Recognizing the time between workday and personal time is a huge weakness as well, because it can flow right into it, especially for families. So I have clients and I have team members who have kids running in and out of the room the whole time as they're working, right? And how do you balance that? You don't just have to balance your family time at home, but you also have to figure out a way to be just as effective while being responsible in both areas in which you play a leadership role in, and that you have responsibilities and commitments in. And that's something, in our remote world, we no longer have that space, that safe haven to be like, well, this is my room and don't come in because, life happens. And it's funny because, like, when you're seeing that, the CEO of some company has has children like running into a room, it's young children, especially because they don't understand. It's really interesting to see how you can navigate and actually create that. Of course, I'm not assuming that that's a very common thing here. Decision making is absolutely important, right? Decision making, like Huang mentioned, is also it can be a strength or a weakness, because and that requires some form of a construct of decision making, like plan, right? So in a lot of our founders meetings and a lot of our entrepreneurship meetings, there is, if you can't agree on a decision making process, then decision, like, are you going to be voting for it, who has higher voting percentages, like what is the process of decision making in a group? If there's no agreement on that, then decision making can take the whole meeting, and it can waste a lot of time. So definitely decision making is a huge component on how to save more time. Human connection, yeah, so there's definitely a way to create human connection online as well. And it's a different skill set than physical human connection. And so understanding how to cultivate the skills of creating connection with, like even now as I'm looking into the screen, right? Like it's definitely more challenging to have a human connection with people who are not showing their videos, right? And to be like, and create that bond and that rapport with someone who's not showing on their videos. And even with video, like you're only getting visual cues. If you were to measure like the type of, the places in your brain that light up when you're actually connecting with someone, it's way less input, or maybe even way more input, when you're doing it visually versus when you're having all of your senses being able to pick up the entire context of what the person is in. So that bonding is definitely different, but it doesn't mean that it cannot exist. And it just means that the way that we frame, the way that we connect is different. And that's a skill set that you can cultivate. Time differences. That's one of the biggest ones, actually. So we have people on the opposite ends of the world. So one person's 4 a.m. could be another person's 4 p.m. So for Paris and Hawaii, we're on completely different ends of the world. And so when we're meeting, so we have like one time zone where we're actually meeting in, and we have people calling 7 a.m. and Pacific time, and then it's like sometime in the afternoon in Eastern time. It's like 10, 11 p.m. in Manila, and then it's all the way like 4 a.m. in Hawaii. And so finding out what time zone fits everybody is going to be a challenge, but it's highly recommended that each team will be able to have a time where they can actually see and connect with everybody. So, and then there's so many other comments that we have here as well. Time efficiency, miscommunication, and lack of accountability, team cohesion, making sure everyone stays motivated, and not much time in between the day because it takes to begin the meeting is log on. All it takes, not much time not much in between time during the day because all it takes to begin a meeting is log. Yeah, so you're actually like 24/7 available on call for the person. Okay, so I wanted to share with you the key pillars for effective leadership, moving into that. So, as you're starting your business, right? And as you are creating this zone of leading and you are creating your product and you're the founder of the business or you're having a vision with your team, the most important thing I found in running these remote teams for about 5 years is vision clarity. And what do I mean by vision clarity? The biggest challenge is that in any sort of team that you're leading is that you don't have clear goals and clear missions for the entire team to follow. And what I mean by that is that there can be conflicting projects. Like each project could have its own goal. And if each project's goal is not aligned to the central mission, then what ends up happening is that the vision for each of the projects could evolve and they could go in completely different directions, and the final goal up top does not get achieved. So first of all, vision clarity is incredibly important. Knowing the mission of your company, knowing, whether it is your company or another person's company, like the mission of it, what is it here to achieve? And what is the vision down the line? Is it a 1-year vision, or is it a 3-year vision, or is it a 5-year vision? Where do you see yourself? What kind of clients, what kind of customers are you seeing? And what are they benefiting? What urgent problem are you solving? And how do you see that being solved? So that's vision clarity. So take a moment and, if you can just even write down for yourself, what might that vision be for you and the company that you're looking to create? A vision could be simply a sentence, right? So you could check that out and see, like, what do you have for your vision? What is your vision? Worldwide internet. Is that a vision? So if you want to just unmute yourself and just share a couple of visions that we have in the room, that would be prosperity for the developing world. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, see, so these are some really great higher level missions and visions that when you're clear on that, then you know, all right, like what are the three things that we need to do in order to achieve this, you know, for our team this year or this month or even this day, right? When you have that clear vision, then you can break down the problem and slot it into doable chunks, creating movements people can align with, right? And that, so you're supporting people to create the movements, right? Like it's that's beautiful. Love it. Yeah. All right, so we have a couple of others. So when you have the vision of your company really clearly defined as well, and usually if you have multiple co-founders in a company, you'll have a common vision that that is a higher level vision that encompasses everybody's like purpose and everyone's reason to even do this work together and to collaborate together. And when that vision is really clear, then you can always take that vision down into the decision making process. And, you know, like someone mentioned, decision making is really difficult. And you can always say, okay, well, then if this is our goal, are these items that we're debating on, like which one? How are we aligning that to that center star, that North Star that all the team members are going towards? What if your visionary path goes wrong? I think that's the reason why some organizations have conflicting missions internally, how to create or find a safety net. Okay, Huang asked this question. What if your visionary path goes wrong? So I think that's the reason why some organizations have conflicting missions internally. All right. So this brings us to, there's like two ways to answer that question, right? First of all, like visions sometimes evolve. So your vision when you're starting a company might be different from your vision 3 years down the company and the vision 5 years down the line. So having a cohesion meeting or having a team meeting where the whole either the whole company or the management team or the founders get together to realign their visions is really important. So realignment is really important. And then the second part is, what if everyone has conflicting missions internally, right? And that can happen too. And so what happens when there are conflicting missions is oftentimes because different people's value systems are conflicting or people interpret the vision differently. And so having a structure in place that talks about, okay, if a conflicting situation does happen, how are we going to resolve this? What is the protocol that we're going to go through in order to reach? Is it a consensus base or is it a certain people have more say, and how do you manage that? So there's an agreement that you can create with your founding team members to understand, okay, what is the decision making process or the conflict resolution process, which is even more important because conflicts arises inevitably when you have lots of smart people in the room with differing ideas, right? And you want that sometimes because you don't want everyone to just, you know, if you're in a room of all like-minded people, then you don't really get that challenge and you don't get that different types of outlook. Reminding society about the interconnectivity, nature, environment, and the world of tech and space. Awesome. Great. So once you have your vision, then you create the results-focused action. Because our time is short and because our attention is short and our energy is limited, once you understand what your vision is, then you want to know, how am I going to know if if I achieve this vision, right? So the results, what is the result and the outcome? Like a well-formed outcome is going to be very important to align directly to the vision. And the reason for that is because if your outcome is not clear, then the vision, then people can end up doing a lot of ancillary busy work or working on things that are not that does not add as much value to the outcome as what it could do For example, um, let's say it's a design piece, right? Like you're designing your logo or you're designing your website. And if your vision is, I'm just going to take something here. If your vision is just reminding society about their interconnectivity with nature, environment, and the world of tech and in the world of tech and space, if that's your vision, and you end up spending, let's say, 6 months designing a website, then sometime like the way that you would like then the outcome is not really clearly defined, right? A lot of people, when they first start their businesses, they spend so much time designing their stuff, is worried about like what things look like, as opposed to create the minimum viable product to actually create a prototype to achieve that result that they're trying to look for from their vision. So when your vision is not clear and your results that you're wanting is not clear, then you might get detracted off of a shiny object or another thing that you think is more important than to stay on track to actually achieve that vision. Does that help? You can waste a lot of time. Like I see so many entrepreneurs when they first start, they spend time thinking about the logo. They spend time thinking about how to make the website pretty. They spend time about with printing business cards. And it's like, if you just spend that time developing your minimum viable product and developing the relationship with your first group of clients and customers, then you'll actually know if this is going to work or not, as opposed to spending time on all these different things. You can spend time on a lot of other things that might not add to the outcome that you're trying to achieve. Okay. So the third thing is systems and processes to consistently produce similar or better results. So now that your vision is clear and you've identified the results and the focus action that are required to create that clarity, then you'll know, okay, what's working and what's not to achieve that vision. And you can start creating systems and processes that give you that same result for your clients or whoever, or the mission that you're working on. And you can do that faster, better, and more efficient. And that's a super shortcut way of creating the result that you want and scaling. Because you can deliver the results for one person and for maybe two people and for maybe even 30 people. But in order to deliver the result that you're looking for in your vision to on a massive scale, there's got to be a process in place that can be repeatable and is efficient and that you're constantly going to improve on, so that that impact reaches however many people you want to be reaching. And that's what we found was the most beneficial thing for spreading the word about what we do, and also being able to manage our budget and our time, right? Our resources, which is your time and your money, right? These are the two main resources you'll be managing as a founder. And if you want to be saving your time and placing it in the most efficient place and saving your energy and putting it in the most efficient place, you've got to have a very clear goal. Okay. So this is this section, and this section is about the clear pillars. I think there's another slide as well on this. Yeah. So before we move on, I just wanted to check in and see if there's what's your main takeaway so far for you? Do you have a better clarity around your vision, or what's the main takeaway so far? I love it. Yes. Validity and clarity trumps everything. Don't fuss about the details. Focus on the clear visions and actions. Better clarity around the importance of having a vision and mission for your company before designing anything. As a designer, I think this will be hard to resist. Yeah, but when you have that clear vision and all your designs and all the elements support that vision, then that makes the entire design process and the design itself much more cohesive, and it really fits the mission. Vision equals manifestation. Prioritize core components and fundamentals. Time zones can actually improve efficiency. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Okay, so the next part of it, we're going to be talking about a couple of things around communication and some of the other remote leadership pillars. So, the first thing around remote leadership pillars is presence. The presence that you have in yourself, within you, when you're communicating your vision is really important. The biggest challenge is having a vision, but nobody in your in your team is as excited with as you are about the vision. Or if you have a very exciting vision and you communicate it in a way that does not inspire your team members. So cultivating skill sets that can support you in creating that presence when you're talking about your product, you're talking about your vision, is incredibly beneficial when it comes to effectiveness. Communication, we talked about those different steps on how to create a simple structure of communication, understanding the outcome, the goal in mind, like what's the communication for, and then different ways on getting all the stakeholders to buy in, as well as having their inputs and creating that outcome. And then trust, right? Trust is really important in this first point as well, because in a remote situation, trust, so another word for bonding is trust, right? And so how do you cultivate trust in a remote world is incredibly important, because when you look at the construct of trust, it's through interactions and through discussions and through working together and through time spent together that you create this trust. So, what kind of activities can you do in the group virtually that allow you to create more trust and bonding with each other? And I'm going to share with you 5 different things that you can create trust. And this is so important, especially in a sales conversation, or especially when you're developing trust with your potential clients, right? People who are going to be buying your product. Because in an online world where you're not going to be able to do trade shows, you're not going to be able to go pitch in person if COVID continues, and have a limited chance of doing that, then you've got to know how to build that trust in with a screen and with the person on the other side of the screen. So would you like to hear the 5 different elements that can really increase your level of trust building? Awesome. Great. So the way I remember this is it's from actually a Chinese medicine structure. So fire, earth, metal, water, and what's the last one? Wood. So, so the first thing is acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is one of the easiest ways to bring someone from their head to their heart. And trust, the emotion of trust, and the feeling of trust is actually something that is developed in the heart. Logically, you can say that it can be, okay, trust this person. But actually, the relationship, and you know this because if you have had any type of love relationship, like it's in the heart, right? And even in business, like a lot of the relationship building is actually a multi-level connection. So acknowledgement is something that is deeper than compliments. Acknowledgement is really seeing the other person, really appreciating the other person, and really being able to bring your full presence into the connection, and being able to authentically and transparently acknowledge the other person. So that can create connection quite quickly. For example, I see Ron on here. I'm like, hey, Ron. For example, when I look at this team right here, and what I really want to acknowledge, I just really want to acknowledge actually Ron for bringing me on here and for trusting me to share with you guys, these different elements that can really elevate your game in being the best possible founders and team members in your team. I want to acknowledge Mikali for communicating with me and really allowing me to understand where you guys are at. And I also want to acknowledge each and every single one of you for making the time to hop on this call and to integrate some of these value systems, some of these ideas into action so that you can immediately implement this into your business and your projects and your life. So that's a way of acknowledgement. So did you feel that? Yeah. It would be different than if I said, "Oh, you're looking all so good today. Like your hair's so nice, your shirt's so beautiful," right? It's a different level of acknowledgement. It's going into the heart, looking at the person, your team member, and really acknowledging them for the work that they did. For example, one of my team members was not performing very well. He was underperforming. And I had to make a decision whether to let him go or to really, you know, tell him this and see if we can change the behavior. And then I acknowledge him first for who he is and the efforts he's put into the project, and then the criticism or the constructive criticisms, and then the next steps, the buy-in, so that to change the behavior and to inspire behavior change, which is very difficult, especially if someone's work ethic doesn't match the work ethic of the team. And so acknowledgement is the first key for trust. And it worked. It took a while, but it worked. He's turned around now. So the second one is curiosity. Curiosity is the water element. So being curious, if someone disagrees with you, and I saw someone say here earlier in the chat about how do you convince someone that they're wrong, right? Someone asked me that. And so curiosity is another relationship building tool and trust building tool. You don't have to agree with someone, and you don't have to um, necessarily engage in a way that is confronting, but you can always be curious, like, why do you think that? Or I'm curious, like, how did this conclusion arise? I have a client who is working at a center, and a lot of times she has a lot of analysts working for her. She's quite in a senior management position, and the way that she used to communicate with her analyst was, why'd you get this number? They're projecting numbers for financial projections. And after talking about how to build trust, because her analysts were not underperforming, how to build trust, she implemented a new way of asking her analyst questions. And she said, I'm curious, how did you arrive at this number? As opposed to just straight away being like, this is wrong. So that's curiosity. The third element is service, coming from a place of service. That is, let's see, metal is acknowledgement, water is curiosity, and then service, right? So service, actually, I think service is metal. Service is about, how can I help you? Like, how can I achieve your goal? How can I help you with your goal? And in turn, then I can ask if you can support my goal. So how can I help you for the team member? Is there any way I can help you with your time management? Right? I noticed that you have been X, Y, and Z, something that you disagree with. Is there anything that I can do to support you? So coming from a place of service allows you to also show up in a place of, I'm on your team and I'm able to, like, we can do this together. So that creates trust as well. Yeah. So service is is really important, especially when you're forming partnerships with other companies. Because when you're a small entrepreneur and you are a small company, a lot of times it will work in your benefit to have other, we call them joint ventures, JV partners, right? To be able to connect with other similar people in the field who are not competitors but are complementary companies, but you can support each other because you're reaching the same audience, and you're providing different services. So you're not direct competitors, but your target audience is similar. And what you can do is you can share client lists, and you can do, like when you build the relationship and the trust with these partners, they can help your business a lot and can help you grow so much faster. Because imagine 3 different marketing resources put together, right? You can create a lot more impact and a lot more efficient when you're doing this. So when you're approaching these people, as even if you're approaching like a podcast person to talk about your business, or approaching these different places that you want to spread your word, PR, marketing, coming from a place of service has worked so much better than being like, I want you to feature us, or I have this product, feature us, right? It's more, so coming from a place of service would sound something like this. So let's say you want to get your word out there, and there's a podcast that reaches all of your audiences. You can come from a place of, hi, like I am a big fan of you. Like go listen to their podcast. And you can be like, I noticed that on episode X, Y, and Z that you mentioned these points. Like and then you think about their audience. What does their audience want? Because the podcaster's mindset, if you're putting yourself in the shoes of that podcast host, they're serving their audience. So you're putting yourself in there and you're thinking, okay, what would their audience want? You'd be like, I believe that your audience could really benefit from these set of things that I have to share with you. Is there, like, what do you think, or is there a way that I can um, uh, support you or your audience as you are achieving your outcome, whatever outcome it is that person is trying to achieve? So when you can serve the person who you're trying to approach, and you can serve their audience, that's a double serve. Like you're you're creating service and preeminence, or it's like that, you're giving first, you're coming from a place of give, and then the relationship builds much easier that way, and coming from a place of service. So remember that when you're creating these relationships, coming from a place of service, whether that's in your team or when you're doing your marketing or when you're doing your PR, will create better results if you're authentic about it, and if you're thinking about, okay, what's in it for them. So the short form for that is WIIF. What's in it for them, or what's in it for me is the acronym for it, like WIIFM. But the me is the person who you're trying to talk to. Cool. So we've got acknowledgement, curiosity, we've got service, and then we also have would, which is choice, giving people a choice. They can say no, right? Like when you approach someone, when you're asking your team members to do something, you're not forcing them to do something, because the biggest challenge is you force someone into a corner and then they snap and they're like, I quit. Right? And that happens a lot. You overwork people, or it's like a sibling relationship. You force them into a place and they're like, I'm done with this. I don't want to do this anymore. And then the amount of time, money, and resources it takes to train a whole new team member to get up to speed is so much more than to maintain the relationship. Although if they are not a good fit, it's important to let that go as well. So giving people a choice, does this sound like something you want to do? Are you in for this? getting the buy-in from the other person is another way to build trust. Right. Right. So we have Sophie saying, I think these strategies form a more personal relationship with your colleagues, and that these strategies would also be great to use in your private relationships outside work. Absolutely. Relationships are relationships, no matter if it's with your colleague, with your loved ones, with your family. It's relationship, right? At the end of the day, it's human to human connection. That's what builds businesses, right? And that's what builds communities. And that's what we're having right now, right? It's authentic, real relationships. It is not fake. Like, fakeness is the opposite of trust. Like, trust is authenticity, and and if you want to be transparent, a lot of companies are also quite transparent with their employees, so that everybody knows how the company is doing and where the direction is. Although there are also a lot of companies who are very secretive with their numbers. So it just really depends on how you want to build your company and what kind of culture that you want to have, and how you want. So the benefit of having a trusting team and a team that you can trust is that what happens is each person in your team is empowered to also be leaders. And when they become and step up into their leadership, they're also able to lead their teams. And that frees up your time to be able to do more things for the company while they're taking care of the fort as well. So finding that few people when you start with that you really trust and who also really trust you is really important, so that you can let go a little bit more, and you can think about more strategic visions and bigger things as a founder. So there's like usually two types. There's a couple of types of different founders, but if you're a visionary founder, then that will be important. And if you're the execution person, the integrator, which we'll talk about a little later, then it's important to have like a visionary partner so that you can balance off of your skill sets. Okay. Trust is incredibly important to building a healthy team and being able to deliver results. For more on this topic, I suggest everyone look at Pat Lincoln's 5 dysfunctions of a team. Len Kiani's. Trust is the foundation. Without it, a team can't win. Yeah, absolutely. Here, there's a blog post. Cool. Love this. All right. All right. So those are 4 elements. I can't remember the 5th one. Fire. What's fire? Anyway, there's one more, and I'll let you guys know like what the 5th element of trust is when I can think of it. So the next thing here we have is time and priority management. All right, so going a little slow here, but I really wanted you guys to get these concepts, and that's why I'm taking some time to go into each in more depth, so that you actually really integrate it into your lives, and so you can implement it and use it immediately. It's like a lot of what I believe is if you don't use it and you don't think about it and you don't integrate it, then you lose it. So okay, so time management. Time management is a huge topic, especially when working remotely, because you can completely be in a world of non-effectiveness if you don't use your time wisely. At the least, it can give you 0 results, but at the most, it can cost you, and it can put you in debt if your company doesn't spend the right amount of resources in the right places and don't have a good focus, right? You can be burning through your venture capital money if your focus is not set. And if you're self-investing, then you could just burn through your own savings if your focus is not in the right place. And so time management is really simple. You can, after there's time management for your vision and what the company mission is, and there's time management for your day-to-day, like every single day, like every single hour. And the easiest way that I put this is with, this is so funny because I literally just had this conversation with my team. So the easiest way I put this is your 80-20 rule. Have people heard about this? Have you guys heard of this 80-20 rule? Yeah? Okay, I got some yeses. Yes, okay, yes. So 80-20 rule basically, does anyone want to share? Does Huang or Ali want to share what you know about the 80-20 rule with the group? Go ahead, Ali.
I've heard of it, but I don't know exactly what it entails.
Okay. What about Huang?
Okay, so I think it's when you focus some of the exclusive but the most crucial resource to generate most of your profits or most of your accomplishments with to a project. But you don't use all the resource, but you only use 20% of them to generate 80% of your success.
Awesome. Thanks, Huang. Yeah, so the 80-20 rule is a Pareto principle. And the Pareto principle states that, I just pulled up the Wikipedia for this. The Pareto principle states that when you look and you take an audit of all of the time or even all of the resources that you're using, what you'll realize, like Huang just mentioned, is that 20% of those resources actually generate 80% of the results. So 20% of your activities in your day-to-day life actually generates 80% of the output. So if your time that you're spending on your school or time that you're spending in your business, think about it this way, 20% of your attention generates 80% of your profits. Right? So in 1 hour, 20% of that can actually generate the results that you want that hour to have, 80% of that. So if you take that 80-20 rule and apply it to time management, then you can quickly understand and quickly bring your focus back into reality and say, what is my 20% that I need to focus on right now? And what that does is that it cuts out all the things you don't need to be focusing. Like if you're writing a thesis, and all of you will be at one point, what is the 80-20 rule? Like what are the most important things I need to understand? When you're building a product, I don't need to build all the bells and whistles. What is the 80-20 rule? Like how am I going to save time on this by focusing my most important resource, which is time, on the 20% that are going to generate the 80% of the results? In a business, typically, people get completely distracted and off track sometimes, and they go into the spiral of like busy work and nonstop work. Then it's like, okay, well, what is the 80-20? What are the revenue generating activities? And what are the 80-20 within that? In a conversation, in an argument, I can be fighting about every single point, but what is the 80-20 of that? What are the most important points that I need to bring across? And what are the ones I can just let go? The 80-20 of habits, right? Like if I wanted to have a morning routine, do I want to implement every single thing in that 1 hour that I have? But what's the most important? What's the 80-20 in this? Diets and food. What is the 80-20 in that, right? Well-being. What's the 80-20 in that? To keep myself centered, calm, focused. So in anything that you do, when you can apply the 80-20 rule, that helps you drastically focus yourself, especially when it comes to the remote world, because sometimes you have 30 minutes in a thing that you could be spending a day on, right? And you're like, I only have 30 minutes to do this. How am I going to get this done? Most people are just throw their hands up and they're like, I can't. And then they miss their deadline. And while that is okay, chances are that we're overcomplicating things. Because if your outcome is clear, like we talked about earlier, and your actions are clear, then you can quickly understand what's the 20% that you need to do. A quick example is in a corporate situation or in a big team situation. I had a client who had back-to-back meetings all day long, I think she was doing like 16-hour days, and she was having back-to-back meetings. She had maybe 30 minutes in between one meeting where she was leading the next meeting, and she wasn't even an expert in that area. She was in a consulting firm. And so she had to have 30 minutes to draw all of her thoughts together, learn about this whole industry, or not the whole industry, but parts of the industry that she was working on, and then show up in front of the clients and be the leader in the conversation and show up as an expert, because in consulting, you're moved in different project groups and you're doing different, you're basically doing different industries in each project. And so you have to quickly just get the knowledge base real quick and then, go into creating the proposals and the execution plans for people, for your clients. And so she was flustered. She was overwhelmed. She was overworked. She had barely slept that week. And she was literally almost just not like delusional, but she had so little juice left in her. And so first of all, what we did was we meditated, help her calm herself down, melt away the stress. Meditation is the 80-20 of well-being. You can find your own as well, but meditation is what we found was one of the most effective ways to get that well-being and that calmness and that focus back in place. It can be done in 5 minutes. And then the second thing we did was ask her, okay, now that you're calm and you can connect with your intellect as well as your intuition and your gut feeling, what is the 80-20 that you need to do for this meeting? She found it. She presented her 3 points, and the client not only did not notice that she didn't take enough time to prepare, but actually had better response than when she took 2 weeks to prepare for something. So your outcome is not in direct correlation with the amount of time you put in something. Although sometimes it is, but it doesn't have to be. If you can get very precise on what your goals are and get super specific and focused on what your outcome is, then and apply the 80-20 rule on top of that, then you have a much more effective way of leading yourself, your own time, and the team members' time. So the question is, what is one area in your life that you can apply the 80-20 rule to? And specifically in terms of time, because we're talking about time management. I'm going to put that in the chat. Studying for tests. Yeah. Although test is a whole nother question, is a whole nother ball game, because sometimes teachers like taking it from some obscure parts of the book, but it depends on how your teacher works. Deciding where to eat. Yeah. Decision making, 80-20, absolutely. Working on a project, prioritization of schoolwork, 80-20. Is it going to take me, so that last 20%, the 80-20 is like 20% to get 80% of the results. And that last 20% to make it to perfection, a lot of people are like perfectionism, that last 20% might take 80% of the work just to get it to like 81%, and another like 80% to get it to like another percent. So, you balance out your priorities and see how much effort do you actually want to put in to get that last couple of percentages. Calibrating which classes are most important. Yeah, there we go. That's a great way of applying that rule. And just remember, when you're short on time, when you're overwhelmed, 80-20 rule can come into play. And it's one of the things that has really helped our team, especially with competing priorities, to be able to refocus. And the first thing people usually say when they're running their own business is that they're completely overwhelmed and there's way more things to do than they can ever handle in, in a regular, normal life, a human's life, right? And same thing with personal relationships, especially if you're, I mean, it's a little out of the scope of this conversation, but but how can you 80/20 rule show up for the other person, right? Okay. Next thing, which we already touched upon a little bit, which is personal energy, emotional well-being, and management. So this is the same thing, 80/20. It's how you manage your personal energy will determine how you manage your presence and how you manage your effectiveness as a leader. Because as you're speaking to your people, as you're creating that forward-moving progress, and as you're creating the cohesion within the team, your energy is so important. Your health and well-being, because your company is dependent on you, then your personal well-being, the amount of sleep you get, the health that you have is way more important than if you were working for another company. Because if you're down, does the company move forward? So in the beginning stages especially, to be able to do your 80/20 on your health is incredibly important, especially for we have a couple apprentices working together and apprenticing with us at the moment, and they were saying that first of all, their 80/20 is carving out time in the morning to get the most important things done in the day. So they literally have 2 hours in the morning. First thing in the morning, they say the best thing for them is to start at 6, finish everything by 9. They're 80/20, but before 9, then the rest of the day is freed up. So that's sort of one of the feedback from our apprentices and our team. And then the second thing was exercise, meditation, and getting all the well-being stuff out of the way first thing in the morning creates a much more effective day, super focused, and just keeps people less stressed and anxious when you're hitting all your other goals during the day. So that's that. All right. So we've talked about the don'ts and do's and how to avoid them. Well, so don't get overwhelmed and how to avoid them. 80/20 rule. If you don't understand a task or you don't have clarity on something, always communicate and ask. If you have a scattered workflow and you're doing you're having a ton of things in your field to do, then organize it, right? Make sure that you have your 80/20 in that organization as well. And digital organization is also really important in the do's and don'ts. Do have a digital way of organizing all of your files, all of your communications, all of your to-dos, using your calendar as a really important tool to organize your time is a huge tip from from just having 10, 20 things thrown at you at the same time. You're like, yep, I'll do that. Yep, I'll do that. But just put it in your calendar. When it comes, set 15 minutes inside your calendar to do it. Will be a really quick way of managing that influx of information and making sure that it has, it exits your responsibility field. As another time management. And then another do and don't is miscommunication of tasks and goals. If you're not clear of the task and goals, then you're probably not going to be able to communicate clearly what the task and goals are for your team. And so really understanding what's the purpose of the task, what is the goal, and then communicating that task so clearly, so effectively, even if you write it out and send it, would be even more important than communicating it verbally, because people can hear half the things that you said, but they might not hear the full part of it. And sometimes what happens is that I'll have like 4 meetings on the same topic because because even if the person recorded the conversation, they might still not be able to understand what you're wanting. And so communicating what you want clearly, or communicating what you're looking for clearly, as even if you take screenshots, you type it out, and the clearer you have it, the easier and more effective it is with your time. You don't have to repeat it or have a lot of meetings to explain it, and to create that cohesion in understanding. So once you get to know the person, then it'll be easier to communicate further. All right. Yeah, written version is so important. Yes, absolutely. Agreements. Everything is based off of agreements. I have a audio that's called expectations versus agreements. There's a lot of times in our world that we expect people to do things because we're just like, well, that's the standard, and you expect them, and you expect this, and you expect that. But have you actually communicated and created an agreement that they actually agreeing to do this in the way that you're seeing it in your head? If there's no agreement, then it's not going to happen. It's just expectation, and it will just hang there, right? And so a lot of times we expect people, especially it starts in the family unit, right? Like, we're expected to do chores, we're expected to do this. So in the same way, the way you want to manage your team is you want to create agreements rather than expectations. And written agreements are more powerful than verbal agreements. So you get if they agree from it verbally, you can always send them an email, be like thanks, just to recap what we just discussed, it was like A, B, and C, and we decided that the timeline for this would be Wednesday. So if you don't measure something, the accountability is not there. So that's another tip, which is if you want to have things done, then there's got to be a date that it is done by. It can be next week, it can be 2 weeks from now, it can be 3 weeks from now. But if there is no set date, it will not get done. What's not measured is not usually going to get done. So that's another one. All right, cool. So I have here the list of, we actually just went over this. So there's a lot of ways for clarity and focus habits that will be very important for self-leadership and time management and organization within your digital world. Breaking down tasks, adjusting the time. If you miss a deadline, how do you adjust it? You have to communicate it as well. A lot of people forget to communicate. If they miss a deadline, they just think that there's like an endless time to complete the task, even for yourself, right? If you procrastinate, then it's just like an endless procrastination, especially if it's not a due date by a professor. So recommit, right? The art here and the skill here is called recommitment. You're able to recommit to your business, recommit to your product. You want to be an entrepreneur, but then your school got in the way. You recommit to your project, recommit to your vision, recommit. So recommitting is a huge skill to have when you're talking about time or the vision that you have for your business or for the impact that you're here to create. Plan your day ahead of time. So you can always plan it the day before or the week before. So these are all some practical skills you can just use immediately. Prioritize the most important tasks and the harder tasks first. Creating a special personal schedule and goals. Developing a system of organizing your work. So time again. So these are all things that our team actually provided. I asked them, what do you find is the most important thing? And self-leadership. Okay, how are we doing so far? Good. All right. Is this useful for you? Can we get a thumbs up for those who are not on screen as well? Okay, great. Cool. Awesome. Great. Is this useful? Is there, okay, great. All right, because I just really wanted to give you guys practical skills. Yeah, we have a question. Is it Sophia?
Yeah, I was wondering, what are some good strategies for preventing like getting distracted in your own personal space? Because at least for me, it's just being like here in my room. It's distracting, because it's like your own personal space. So it's hard to really like focus on your work when you're at work. So.
Okay, got it. Who has that similar question as well? Just give me a show of hands or a thumbs up. Okay. So everyone's like, what can I do? Okay. Everybody, same question. Yeah. How do I focus when I'm in front of my computer, when I'm in my room? What are you most distracted by? Are you distracted by like the apps on the computer or like your phone, or what are the things you're just, yeah, usually you're distracted by that. Okay. So what I like to do, and this is my personal way of managing, you'll find your way as you try different ways of managing your time as well. And this goes for everybody. But my personal way I like to manage my time is I literally write down, actually, let me see, I have a slide about this. Okay. This is how I plan. This is one of the ways that you can plan your day. And this is one of the ways that I do it. So the daily planning example. So I actually create, the 3 most important tasks that I need to complete that day, whether that is a really big task or that is just a part of that bigger task. So I don't really look at it in terms of time, but I look at it in terms of completion. What are the most important things that I need to get done that day? And most of the time, what I do is I actually create the well-being piece first. So the first thing in the what you can control is how you manage the time right when you wake up. If the first thing you do when you wake up is go on the phone, then you're straight away already in distracted zone, because the phone is competing. Like, the design of the phone is to take your attention away, right? That is the whole, like, emails, like ads, social media, that whole industry, that whole technology is attention grabbing. So a lot of times, like, what I see, and when I talk to sleep coaches, and when I talk to a lot of people who really manage their well-being really well, they actually take their phone outside of their room before they go to bed, and then they don't even get to their phone until they finish their well-being stuff in the morning. So their morning routine. For some people, um, that might be meditation to clear your mind, because you're not going to be able to not be distracted. The reason why you're distracted is because there's so much in the front, like in your field of information. And meditation actually helps you clear all that information away, so you can have clarity, and then you can be like, well, what are the 3 most important things I need to do? And then you can set out and do those 3 things. However, if meditation doesn't, well, you can try meditation. If it doesn't work for you, exercise is really useful as well. So if you just go out for a run or do your favorite exercise till you sweat, so that you actually get that zone of flow, you get into your zone of flow first thing in the morning, and that actually already it's half the battle, because you've already created that one dopamine hit of success. Then your body's like, all right, cool, like I can do more of this. And then you go into the phone. So water, exercise, meditation, highly recommend it. And then the moment you realize that you're off track on your computer, or the moment you notice that you're distracted, what you can do is you can literally just turn off your Wi-Fi. This is like the personal experience. Turn on my Wi-Fi, turn off everything, and then recommit to your goals. Because a lot of people, like, at the moment you realize you're distracted, and you're like, well, this is kind of like wasted time already. I've already gone down this rabbit hole. Then therefore, I'm not going to finish this task, right? But the moment that you actually realize that, and you just reset. Imagine you restart your computer, restart your body, and then just be like, all right, this is a fresh start. I'm going to redo it. What really helps is ice cold showers for a body, like a physical reset. Wim Hof does it. He's like a guy who does a lot of breath work and does you can check him out if you're interested. And then also what really helps is another session of intense cardio activity, just to reset everything and then come back refreshed. So that breaks the pattern of that distraction addiction. Because yeah, does that help? Okay.
Yes.
All right, Daniel, you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question more towards like time differences, but also similar to time management,
Yeah.
because a problem that I've been facing is because I'm in like probably the worst time zone in relation to Pacific time, that when tasks are either like given or communicated between team members, there's a lot of time in between where communication just isn't there because by default of like me being asleep or them being asleep, or yeah, like basically that, and also just our inability to be like in the same time zone. So how can how has your team like optimized that sort of gap, and also as a result, right, how do you be more efficient with the work that you're like doing yourself when there's this gap that happens between the teams? It's kind of a long-winded question. I'm sorry about that, but if that makes
Are
sense.
you in what industry are you in, or what kind of
Well,
what
this
are
is
you
more
working
like
on with your team?
general. This is more like a general question on like just teamwork in general.
Okay.
Um,
Because I was like, are you a coder? Because that would be very different than if you were, let's say, like on a design team, then, like different projects. But
yeah, not coding, not design, more like general project.
communication. Okay, got it. All right,
Sure.
perfect. Yeah. I will hold your thought on that question. Actually, maybe I'll jump into it. I know Huang also has like a longer question he was mentioning. And Wim Hof is fantastic. Okay, calibrating which classes are important. Okay, great. So I will jump into that part of it because that is literally bringing us to our next point, which are the tools that we can use to stay communicated, stay in connection, and stay in the communication. So before we go into that, like what I wanted to, okay, let me just see here. We have three more things to cover. So we have the tools and the team structures and the KPI. The team structure, I kind of talked about a little bit. The tools, we mentioned some. And then the KPIs are about how to measure success. What is most important to you guys? So we're just going to take a quick vote here so that I can, what's the 80-20 for the next 20 minutes, right? Okay, so everyone who wants to do tools, raise your hand. Pick one of them. Tools, KPIs, or team structures. And Daniel, your question would be under like tools and team structures. I'll talk about it in those two. So tools, KPIs, or team structures. Okay, so first, who would want to know all the tools that you can do to have better team cohesion and better communication? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. Okay, I'm just gonna write here 4. Can you just, okay, tools 4. All right. And then, so tools 4. And then next one, KPIs, success measures for your company. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, KPIs. All right. And then we have the team structures, how to structure your teams. 1, 2. Okay, so we're going to go in that order, all right? We're going to do KPIs first, and then we're going to go tools 3. Okay, and then we're going to go to structures. And that's how 80-20 is done in real life. All right, so let's get into this. The first thing is KPIs. All right. Okay, so in order for you to know the KPIs of your team, you got to know what is your number one goal, right? So we talked about the vision already, and the challenge with not having clear key performance indicators is that your team will just go in all these different directions. And key performance indicators is basically a way to use numbers to describe your outcome. So if you can have a number that describes the outcome that you're focusing on, whether that's in a quarter or whether that's in a year or whether that's in a team project, maybe it's like a duration of 3 weeks or 4 weeks, like, or a semester long project, what would that numerical goal be for you? I'll give you some examples because I noticed this is like a complete like new question for you. I'll give you some examples. So for example, for our company, right, we're doing we run webinars every single week. And the goal is to impact and empower and liberate, our bigger goal, like 1 million leaders. And then, so for per month, what that might look like, we break it down, might look like we're going to talk to about, let's say, 100 leaders, right? And so our numbers would go from, okay, how long are we going to achieve this goal? How long does it take to achieve that? How long does it take? What can we do within a month? And then what does that mean within a week, right? And then that goal might be, speak to this many people. So this is a very simplified way of looking at it. And it's not exactly accurate to what we're doing at the moment, but it could be your number. From another KPI could be, so for a more advanced company, could be cost of customer acquisition. So if they're saying, I'm going to lower my cost of customer acquisition, that's our goal for this quarter, then that's like the number that you're looking at, and that's the dollar sign of the cost of acquisition. It could be traffic, right? Like how much traffic do I want to drive to my website right now? It could be how much revenue are we going to build in this month? It could be, actually wrote something down here. So there's many ways of categorizing these different types of goals. So what do you feel is the one for you? How would you create a number that could relate to the vision that we talked about earlier today? Usually in a business, there are two types of KPIs. One describing revenue, right? So anything to do with revenue. So traffic would be related to revenue. Conversions would be related to revenue. So out of how many people do I talk to, how many people become clients? That's like a simple way of thinking about conversions. And delivery can be related to revenue. How well do we deliver a product? How well are the customers receiving that product? So that these three components are all under the revenue KPIs, right? So then how well are you delivering the product? How do you use a number to describe that? Is it based off of how many people refer your product to other people, and how do you track that? Conversions, right? What percentage are you actually tracking? Are you tracking so first of all, you can just pick one of the categories that are important. And the second category within the goal, the KPIs or the goals that you can be setting, is also capacity. So usually, typically within a quarter, you can be picking one of these goals, either revenue or capacity. Are you increasing your revenue this quarter, or are you increasing capacity this quarter? And oftentimes you can't really do both unless you have a really big team and each one has responsibility for different parts of it. And capacity really means two different things, right? So one is business systems, like how are we optimizing our process in order to achieve results? So the actual process, or it is how much revenue does each task create? So if we're spending a lot of time on this particular task, how are we directly relating this to the amount of revenue that it's bringing in? If you're thinking about it from a business perspective. So is it worth it to be spending this time from a revenue generating perspective? Of course, there's R&D, which, is a different category. So these are some of the ways that you can look at what are we measuring this month? What are we measuring this quarter? Because whatever gets measured, gets improved. If you don't measure it, then you don't know where you are. It's not about just having an MVP sometimes as well, right? It's actually about taking it to the next step and the next step, and you consistently iterating on it. But if you're consistently iterating on it, by what measure are you making the decision upon what to iterate on? And so that also addresses one of the questions earlier, like what if your decision-making process, what if there's a lot of conflict? So it's about, reaching a consensus, if your company is run by consensus, or it's reaching, a agreement on this is the key performance indicator. This is the number that we're going to focus on so that everybody is on board to focus on that goal and that number. That's another concept. So, it's a crash course. So in your own KPIs, in your own visions, what do you see as the number that relates to your vision? Huang mentioned past results in statistical analysis can predict future KPIs. Yeah, a lot of times that is. Percentage increase in product engagement before and after branding strategy. Okay, yeah, absolutely. From a designer's perspective. And then and then in more detail, that would be what would indicate brand engagement, right? And what would be the indication for that? So then you would go into more finer details, and so you can actually find the number in the ads section or in the data analytics of that to be like, this is the number because this can actually be measured and traced, right? So what is a number that you are going to measure for yourself to be able to know that you've improved and your team has improved? What is that KPI for your team or you? And if you need some support on this, like we can also, speak a little bit about this later. All right. So just going to give you just another 30 seconds in case you want to just drop some questions in the chat or just mention what your KPI might look like. And then we're going to move into the tools, and then, we're going to move into the structures, and then we're going to move into tools. Number of hours to increase revenue by 1%. Personal KPI. Sophia. That's a little bit harder to measure because you don't know, because effort doesn't equal to output, or effort doesn't equal to outcome. It's more about focus. So it might be like deciding an outcome, like, let's say you have a revenue goal, and then what activity, what would that KPI be? That would be what you have to identify, what key activity gives you that key revenue goal, and then what number is associated with that key activity. For example, maybe a number of conversations you're having might create the potential of selling your product, your design product, which would equate to revenue. So you got to kind of work backwards and be like, what's the key activity that relates to that revenue generating activity that relates to the revenue? That's one way to look at it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you want to lose your most productive yet also most opposing to your vision employee and potentially KPI to serve your vision, for example, expanding to a new market or doing philanthropic mission? I'm a bit confused with this one. Do you want to lose? Okay, Huang, I am not quite sure of your question. A lot of the answers but I can say this, for a lot of the answers for this conversation per se is catered towards founders and smaller companies. And the reason for that is because in the survey earlier, we talked about a lot of people are just starting their companies and just starting small teams. So in a bigger organization, if you are the founding person of a bigger organization, you can obviously design the way, the structures of decision making and the way of what productivity means in that structure, and then you can you can influence that, or you might already be in a structure that has already been predetermined. Then you have to work around what the pre-existing systems are already in place and the pre-existing processes. You want to lose your most productive yet most opposing to your vision employee. And potential, okay, right to serve vision. Okay, so this one is also, it's a personal decision because so in a big company, your personal vision isn't as important as the company vision, right? So if your employee, his question is, if your employee is the most productive, however, is most opposing to your vision, so there's conflict, but yet they're super valuable because they're creating results for you, then would you, and it's a revenue thing, then how would you deal with it? Would you rather lose them or would you rather keep them? Very interesting question. So again, it's about the final mission. If the company that you're working for is in this vision and that's the one who's paying the bills for the employee, then they're going to have the say, right? That's the most important thing. But if you're the person and you're deciding that the philanthropic mission is the most important, then you get to make that decision. If you have to balance it, which is most of the time that's the case, if you have to balance that decision, then that's your way of structuring how does this balance, how do you balance this decision? Like what would be considered as productive for the company and constructive for the company, and what would be considered as destructive, or creating more conflict and chaos than is worth it for that person's output. Does that help? Quick example is there's a coder who was extremely aggressive, and in a small team that I was working with or had relationships with their founders, and they were incredibly smart, but they created drama every single day, and they were giving really good results and really great products, but yet the entire team morale got completely just drained of energy because of that person's presence. And so even though their productivity was really high, the team still decided to let that person go because the amount of drain it cost every single person on the team was so high that it wasn't worth it for them. So that's one person's decision. So it's a balancing act of that. Okay. All right. So next thing we're going to do is quickly go over the chart of accountability. So team structure. So this is a team structure chart from the book called Traction. Highly recommend it if you are a founder and you're looking to grow your business in different ways, or just starting out. So it's important to understand the roles and responsibility of each person, especially if you have a co-founding team of 2 or more. And the reason for that is because each person on the team will be responsible for different types of KPIs, the different measuring key performance indicators. And so more often than not, what you'll see is you'll have a visionary who's the one who usually thinks about the idea, or it could be like a team who does that, but one person who really, owns sort of that big idea thinking and whatnot. So under visionary, you can have certain KPIs for the person who is that creative thinker, innovative thinker outside of the box. Integrator is usually someone who integrates all of these different elements and makes sure that all of these pieces are working in tandem to execute that vision. So it's the executor, right? The person who execute to help the execution to happen. And within that, you've got the finance team, you've got the sales team, the marketing team, the operations team. This is a very simplified version of what an accountability chart could do. So the finance person could be responsible for, a couple of different items and KPIs. The sales team is in charge of a couple of different ones, and so is the marketing team. They're in charge of the marketing, and the operations is the day-to-day and the way that all of the different components of the delivery system could be under operations. Delivery of your product. So when you understand the different components in your team, then you understand what key performance indicators are for each member or each piece of that piece, then you're going to be able to, each team member within that chart, then you're going to be able to more easily understand and, how to say it, more easily, cohesively achieve your outcome. So that's that. And then we have a whole list of tools that can also support the different types of remote team working scenarios. Before we continue, I see that Ron has unmuted himself. Did you want to share something?
No, I just know that we're getting close to the end, so I just unmuted.
Okay, gotcha. Awesome. Okay, so, all right. So this is some really easy ways of keeping the team in check. Weekly focus meetings, one-on-one and in teams. So if you are in any scenario, one-on-one meetings are key to increase performance and increase productivity. And they can be 10-minute meetings with the team. So weekly is usually important. And of course, the commitment level and the 80-20 as we talked about earlier. And then in addition to that, we've got lots of, let me see here, lots of tools and resources that we use on a daily basis to keep everyone on the same page. Airtable, Trello, which is a project it's like it looks like a whiteboard and has a lot of different cards. Asana, project management system. Finance, there's like a lot of apps that can track it so that you can spit out the P&L for you. Collaboration tools like Slack, which is a huge like chat channel that you can organize, and also file sharing tools and visual training to communicate them. So like what we said earlier, the most important thing is to be able to increase your communication skills through different types of inputs. So Loom is like a Zoom, like a screen sharing tool that you can literally communicate what you need in a visual manner. Okay, so those are the tools. All right, so we're just almost at the top of the hour, and I just wanted to thank you and acknowledge all of you for being here and to continue doing this work on coming into entrepreneurship and deciding to really step into entrepreneurship and deciding to, you know, take the path less taken, take the road less taken, and push yourself out of your comfort zones, manage your own leadership, manage your teams, and also, you know, being a leader in whatever team you join. It will be invaluable to the people around you when you can not only just manage yourself and manage, you know, the whole situation and make it better. So really grateful for that. Yeah. Do you have anything to say, Ron?
No, I was just going to thank you for taking your time and sharing your thoughts with everyone here. And thanks to everyone who showed up at various time zones around the world today to go through this. So that was great. It's an important topic. And I think a lot of the issues that you touched on get touched on by many different writers and thinkers, right? But it's all, each individual perspective can hit somebody special, right? So I think it's always important to listen to more people, to learn about organizational health, and whether it's a remote world or directly, and just keep trying to find that person or those ideas that strike you individually, and just take it to heart, and be transparent and healthy with everybody in your work. So thank you very much, everyone. I'll leave I think everyone on the chat right now is in the fellows program.